What you're seeing on the screen right now is a very top tier meta team that is very powerful and been recently discovered by Xiangling. But most importantly is that this team, yes, does run with Kokomi, and Kokomi is actually irreplaceable in this party. And this team is the first team in Genshin Impact that simultaneously use 4 elements to do its reaction. And I mean simultaneously. We'll explain that later in a bit. But anyway, this is the team Sukokomon. Please don't ask me where the name come from. Sukokomon is short for Sucrose and Kokomi Pokemon, and it's a team revolved around using Sucrose and summoning your free Pokemon, namely Oz, the jellyfish, and finally guoba. The joke here is of course that Sucrose is a Pokemon trainer with her free Pokemon, which are guoba, the jellyfish, and Oz, as we mentioned before. Now, however, before we dive too deep into how this team works and how to pilot this team, I have to give you guys a fair warning. The theory behind this team and the execution behind this team is in the way too dank category. And so, unless you are mentally prepared, this is your final warning. With that being said, however, even though this is a top meta team, using a much easier to play team such as National Team or the Morgana team is gonna be much better for you 99% of the time. Once again, this is a top meta team involving Kokomi, so if you are a Kokomi lover and you are really looking for a top tier meta team that you really want to put your Kokomi in, this is the team for you. Now, on the surface, this looked like just a regular Sucrose tazer team, with Kokomi supplying the Hydro and Fischl supplying the Electro. If you have been keeping up with the Genshin theorycrafting meta, you should be no surprise to that Sucrose tazer is a very strong type of team, and so this team being working out is not really surprising. However, what exactly is guoba doing here? Why do we need the Xiangling here? As it turns out, there is actually a lot more in depth about this behind it. The thing that makes this team special is that it creates what known as the explosion reaction, which is the first of its kind in Genshin Impact. Everybody knows that Genshin Impact is a game about combining elements. For example, combining Pyro and Hydro will allow you to do vaporize damage, which is really good. And usually you want to combine 2 different elements to create some kind of crazy reaction. That's what Genshin Impact is, right? Well, yes, but why stop at 2 elements? Previously, we learned that electric charge will maintain both elements, and if you apply a Pyro on top of that, you can actually use the Pyro to simultaneously react with both the Hydro and the electric component. That is the basis of how Raiden National work, using Xiangling to react with the Electro from Raiden as well as the Hydro from Fischl. You are able to do reaction known as Vape Load, which allows you to do Vaporize and Overload simultaneously. But once again, why stop at 3 elements? Why don't we do 4 elements together? By using Pyro, Hydro, Electro, and finally adding the Anemo on top, we create the first Genshin Impact element reaction that use 4 elements simultaneously. I would like you to pay close attention to the screen and look at how many damage is currently popping up. You might be very confused at what is going on, so let's take a look again and see exactly what it is. Can you count the amount of unique damage currently happening on the screen? It might be very difficult to do so. However, observing closely, you see Electro Charge, Overload, Vaporize, Swirl, all kind of reaction going on. This is the world first 4 element reaction in Genshin Impact. So let's go back and take a look and do some investigation to see what exactly is going on, and allow me to explain it step by step to you. Theory number 1, both Hydro and Electro element can coexist on the enemy at the same time. This is known as the Electro Charge reaction. Theory number 2, when the enemy is both simultaneously infected with Electro and Hydro, applying another element on top will simultaneously react with both of these elements. For example, applying Anemo on top will do a swirl on the Hydro as well as a swirl on the Electro. This right here is the basis behind Sucrose tazer team, as it allows you to do triple swirl damage by simultaneously applying swirl onto both of these elements. Similarly, again, this is also how Raiden National work. By applying Pyro on top of the electric charge, it allows you to do something called the Vape Load, as we mentioned before. Theory number 3, when you have 2 different unique elements on 2 different unique enemy, doing a swirl on top will allow you to carry these elements onto the other enemy and do a reaction using those elements. For example, here we have Pyro and Crowd on 2 different enemies. This allows us to do a melt reaction on Sucrose. At this point, the game will use Sucrose stat to calculate the melt reaction damage, and it's treat Sucrose doing that melt reaction herself. And here is the $500 question. What happens if you have an enemy affected by Electro and Hydro with another enemy affected by Pyro? And at this point, you do a Sucrose elemental skill on top, applying Anemo and swirling all of them together. Well, you get a giant explosion, because what happens is you'll swirl the Electro and Hydro together to do electric charge damage. But what's most importantly is that you will carry this Pyro reaction from the other enemy over and then apply this power on top of the other thing that you're already doing. At this point, all the damage calculations such as overload or vaporize will be calculated using Sucrose stats. And since you're building tons of elemental mastery on Sucrose already, you will be able to do tons of damage, as if you have a battery here with the Hydro and Electro, and then you light that battery on fire. You just get so much explosion damage, like But while this is pretty in theory, how can you possibly actually do this in actual combat? I mean, how can you precisely apply that many elements to different enemy? And the answer is actually lie in guoba. Everybody know that guoba like to eat a chili and then spit out some fire because it's too hot. And that's usually how guoba apply pyro infusion. But that's only usually. When guoba is eating his chili and right before he split his fire, he is actually going to get too hot, and so he actually going to apply pyro infusion onto himself. So what this means is that by putting guoba next to your enemy and swirling not the fire that guoba spit out, but swirling the body of guoba himself. You heard it correctly. We're gonna swirl guoba himself. We can actually transfer the pyro from guoba body onto the enemy, and this will give us very reliable bomb explosion, as now we can control the element very well. So basically what you're looking for is when guoba have a exclamation mark above him, you want to do a swirl just like that. But now that you know the theory behind the team, how do you properly execute it? And I hope you guys are ready for this with your pen and paper to take some notes, because it's about to get way too dang. Summon your Oz, Jellyfish, and then your guoba. Switch your Sucrose to do a normal attack. Cast your skill to swirl guoba. Do 2 normal attack on Sucrose, and then cast your skill again to swirl guoba. Switch your Xiangling and summon your Tornado, and then cast Kokomi burst and do an N2C, N2D, finally a N2C again. Resummon Oz using a Fischl burst. Resummon guoba, and then switch your Sucrose to do another normal attack, and finally casting your skill again to swirl guoba, and then cast your Sucrose elemental burst, and finally just normal attack on Sucrose until your Oz disappear, and then you repeat from the very beginning. Repeating from the beginning, you want to first start by summoning your Fischl Oz, and then switch to your Kokomi and summon your Jellyfish, and finally switch to your Xiangling and summon guoba. At this time, you will be able to transfer the TTDS onto your Xiangling, which is on guoba, and then switch to your Sucrose and do 2 guoba swirl. Once again, the timing is when guoba have an exclamation mark above him, so you do a swirl, normal attack, and then do another swirl. And once you have done that, you want to switch to Xiangling and cast your elemental burst. At this time, the TTDS buff from Kokomi has not ran out yet, so you will be able to snapshot that TTDS buff onto Xiangling Tornado. And then you want to switch to Kokomi and cast your elemental burst and do a couple attack, namely N2C and N2D, to supply the Hydro for Xiangling to do some vaporize. And once you have done that, you will be able to summon Oz again by using Fischl Elemental Burst, and at this time, the guoba will be back up, and you can resummon the guoba from your Xiangling, and finally doing another swirl from your Sucrose to complete the cycle. And finally, just cast Sucrose Elemental Burst and normal attack until your Oz go away, and you will be able to start from the very beginning again once your Oz have went away. So namely, what you will do again is summon your Fischl, summon your Jellyfish, and then resummon your guoba, and once again, you will start here to do the guoba swirl. This team have very good single target damage. It is actually able to match some of the top meta team in the single target damage category. But most importantly is that this team also have extremely good AoE, and it's the reason why Kokomi is necessary in the team. Because Kokomi Jellyfish is able to supply long-term off-field Hydro application in a AoE faction, which currently other character cannot do. Not Xingqiu's, not Mona. They do not have, once again, long-term off-field AoE Hydro application. And it's the reason why Kokomi is actually irreplaceable in this team. Building the character in this team is pretty much the same as always. So for example, on Sucrose, you want to go full Elemental Mastery with the 4 VP set. Although you will be running a Sacrificial Fragment just for the Elemental Mastery substat in this case. And on Fischl, same thing as always, Stringless, Scour Harp, or Windblown Odor Alley Hunter. followed by either 2 Gladiator, 2 Thunder Free, 2 Gladiator, 2 Shiminara, 2 Shiminara, 2 Thunder Free, or something like that. As always, typical substat distribution. Moving on to the Kokomi, we're gonna be using the brand new artifact set, the Ocean Hue Clam. Although even before this artifact set was released, this team was actually already discovered by Xiangling to be really strong. And now, after Kokomi got a buff using the new artifact set, this team is even stronger than before. And the weapon on Kokomi is of course gonna be the TTDS, as it's one of her best in slot weapon. And finally, we have Xiangling. Now, Xiangling is going to be a little different than usual, simply because now that we are not running with Bennett in our party, we're going to have to build a lot of elemental mastery on your Xiangling. So right here, I'm running 230 energy recharge, and I'm using a R5 Phoneus lens with the 4-set album set. And yes, I am running a energy recharge sense. This is necessary as Xiangling does not generate that much power energy and we don't have Bennett in our party. However, it is actually worth it. The calculation have shown that even though you build a bunch of ER on Xiangling, this team is still really strong. You will have to do this, unfortunately. If you don't have a high refinement Phoneus lens and you have a high refinement chitin, you can use that as well. It's actually really good if you have a refined 5 chitin, and so that is something you can consider. However, at the end of the day, yes, this team is very strong and is considered to be top meta by Xiangling mains. This team is just way too difficult to execute, and therefore running some other team like national team, international team, or Morgana team is generally much more efficient, and those team also just does much more in most cases. However, there is still a valid reason to run this team. Either you found this team really cool or really funny, and so you decide to try it out, or you are a Kokomi lover desperately looking for a top tier meta team that you can finally put her in, and you're willing to go through any hurdle, you're willing to learn the difficulty of this team, you're willing to go through all of that just to find a top tier meta team that you can put your Kokomi into. In this case, this team is for you, you know, because finally for once there is a top tier meta team that Kokomi belong in. So if you are looking for that, this is for you. Regardless, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and even if you don't want to play this team, I hope you at least enjoy the funny meme of this team. With that being said, as always, hope to see you guys next time as well. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.